Chapter 1. At 9 o'clock in the evening, while working a part-time shift at the milk tea shop, I suddenly received a notification from an entertainment app. Top actress Callista's mystery boyfriend makes an appearance at her birthday party, splurging millions to win her smile. The video showed a dreamy scene with flowers carpeting the ground and fireworks lighting up the night. It was dazzlingly beautiful. But something in the video caught my eye. The man standing beside Callista looked oddly familiar. I took a screenshot and zoomed in. Though the man's face wasn't visible, 5 years of marriage had trained my eyes well. I immediately recognized the back of my husband, Gideon Guerrero. The giveaway? The colorful braided bracelet on his wrist, one I had tied on him just that morning. It was a traditional custom from my hometown during the Dragon Boat Festival. To ensure it stayed put, I had even made a tight knot. It wouldn't come off unless cut. Clearly, he hadn't dared to remove it, probably afraid I'd question him. In the video, Gideon was holding hands with Callista, watching the fireworks. At the climax of the display, Callista tiptoed and kissed him on the cheek. If you weren't my husband, I might have found the scene picturesque. Then a comment floated across the screen. Rumor has it her boyfriend spent $1 million on this extravagant birthday party. $1 million? To me, that figure was as unreachable as the stars. Gideon always claimed to be penniless. Just last week, when our shampoo ran out, he suggested diluting the bottle with water to stretch it. He said the same thing about toothpaste, insisting we could squeeze a little more out of the tube. I agreed with him. After all, we were poor. Another comment appeared. Do you know who he is? That's Gideon Guerrero, sole heir to the Guerrero Group. A millionaire. $1 million is pocket change for him. What? My eyes widened in disbelief. I exited the app and searched for Gideon Guerrero. Countless search results popped up, but the top one was a profile for Gideon Guerrero of the Guerrero Group. With trembling hands, I clicked on it. His bio was accompanied by a striking photo of him. He had lied to me, not even bothering to change his name. How foolish was I not to realize it sooner? As I stared at my phone, waves of shock and anger rolled over me, leaving me breathless. Gideon and I had met at a matchmaking event. After 2 months of dating, he proposed, with a heart-shaped paper ring. I must have been out of my mind to find it romantic and unique, accepting his proposal without hesitation. I even broke ties with my family to marry him. On our wedding day, he hesitated. After much probing, he finally confessed he had been swindled in a business partnership and was now burdened with over $150,000 in debt. He told me that marrying him would only drag me down, as he couldn't offer me a good life. But his honesty moved me. I was determined to be with him, no matter what. Gideon said he was an orphan with no family or support, thanking me for giving him a home. After our marriage, we lived in the apartment I rented. I covered the rent and daily expenses, while he used every cent to repay his debt. To support us, I worked tirelessly, holding a full-time job during the day and a part-time gig at the milk tea shop at night. At 20-something, I already looked like I was pushing 40. Last night, after being intimate, he held me and said, "Babe, thank you for giving me a home. Without you, I'd still be wandering with no place to call my own. I'm so lucky to have you." His words filled my heart with warmth. I kissed his cheek and whispered, "Me too, Gideon." He sighed and added, "If only I didn't have this debt. You wouldn't have to work so hard." "I'm sorry, truly." I reassured him, "It's okay. As long as we work together, things will get better." At the time, I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. Gideon was handsome, fit, and completely devoted to me. I even dreamed of a future where we'd pay off his debt, save for a home, and have children, a perfect little family of 4. But reality had other plans. A message from Gideon popped up on my phone. "Honey, I'll be working late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you, Gideon." Gideon worked as a receptionist at a hotel. If I hadn't seen the video, I might have foolishly believed him, sympathizing with how hard he was working. Why had he lied to me? I stumbled home after my shift, my mind replaying every moment of our relationship. The pain was unbearable. Lost in thought, tears streaming down my face, I reached the last traffic light before our apartment when a sharp pain gripped my chest. I cried as I walked, my tears blurring the path ahead. By the time I reached the last traffic light before my neighborhood, a sudden, sharp pain tore through my chest. The world spun briefly, then faded into darkness. The blaring siren of an ambulance pulled me out of unconsciousness. Half awake, I could barely make out a voice speaking near my ear. The patient has a history of heart disease. Chronic fatigue has triggered an acute myocardial infarction. I wanted to open my eyes, to see the faces of the people around me, but my eyelids felt impossibly heavy. Exhaustion weighed me down like an anchor. A rhythmic beeping pierced the air, followed by a panicked voice. "This isn't good, blood pressure is dropping, no heartbeat detected." Chapter 2. A violent suffocating sensation jolted me awake. I opened my eyes suddenly, gasping for air. What greeted me was the familiar interior of the bubble tea shop. "Eloan, are you okay? You're sweating a lot," asked Peach, my colleague, her tone filled with concern. I touched my forehead, confirming it was damp with sweat. As I wiped it away, I replied, "I'm not feeling great, just a little tight in the chest." Peach handed me a glass of water. "It's not busy right now. Go take a break in the back. I'll call you if things pick up." I took the glass, sipped the water, and nodded. "All right, call me if you need me." I needed time to process what was happening. The memories were too vivid to dismiss. Was it just a dream, or something else entirely? In the break room, I reviewed the events in my head from beginning to end. This wasn't a dream. It had really happened. I had been reborn. Reborn on the day I discovered my husband's affair. At exactly 11:15, a notification pinged on my phone. The timing was identical to my previous life. Opening the link, I saw the same video as before. There they were, Gideon and Callista, nestled close together. But unlike my previous life, I wasn't overcome with shock and heartache. This time I was calm, almost detached. I walked back out and asked Peach, "What would you do if your husband lied to you and cheated on you?" Peach, a Gen Z firecracker, clutched her bubble tea and declared fiercely, "I'd kick him out with nothing. Ruin his reputation. And make sure he and that homewrecker got as far away as possible." I nodded thoughtfully. Yes, that's the rational way to think. Losing my life over a scumbag like him was beyond foolish. Making Gideon leave with nothing might be unrealistic given his resources, but ruining both him and Callista was well within reach. Especially Callista. As a public figure, her career would be obliterated if the affair went public. With that thought, I recorded the video, saved it, and uploaded it to the cloud for safekeeping. Just as I finished, Gideon's text came through. "Hey, babe, I have to work late tonight. Don't wait up. Love you, your hubby." The content was exactly the same as last time. I took a screenshot, uploaded it to the cloud, and made a mental note to keep it for future use. Heaven had granted me a second chance, and this time I'd make him pay. After my shift, I hailed a cab home. It was the first time I'd ever taken a cab since getting married. Normally, I'd take the bus, walk, or ride a shared bike to save money. One cab ride cost as much as 2 weeks of bus fare. Every penny I saved went toward helping Gideon pay off his so-called debts. I had lived frugally to support him, only to discover he was a millionaire, pretending to be broke. The sheer irony was laughable. When I got home, I sat on the couch and stared at the apartment we had shared for 5 years. Sleep was impossible. Gideon didn't come home that night either. While I planned my next steps, he was likely in the arms of a glamorous actress. The next morning, I requested leave from my company, cashing in all the vacation days I hadn't taken in the past 5 years. My boss was shocked. I was known as the company's workaholic, taking on every tough assignment to earn more money. "I'm just feeling burned out and need some time to recharge," I explained casually. Understanding my situation, my boss approved the leave without hesitation. He even told me to skip the usual handover process and focus on resting. I quickly freshened up and left home without eating breakfast. As I walked toward the neighborhood gate, a familiar figure caught my eye across the street. It was Gideon. Panicking, I ducked behind some bushes. He stepped out of a Rolls-Royce with a bag in his hand, wearing the same t-shirt and jeans he had on yesterday, not the tailored suit from the video. I had seen this car parked at the gate many times. Once, during a walk with Gideon, I had jokingly asked, "How can someone afford a luxury car like that but not a garage?" He had just smiled and said nothing. Now I realized it wasn't a matter of affordability, he simply didn't care. To him, luxury cars were probably nothing special. As he got closer, I noticed the bag he was carrying contained fried dumplings. From Dumpling Q, my favorite place. Back home, he called me. Seeing the caller ID still set as Dear Hubby, I cringed. What had possessed me to use such a nauseating nickname? When I answered, Gideon's voice was warm and cheerful. "Babe, I'm home from work. I got your favorite dumplings from Dumpling Q. Where are you?" Steeling myself, I replied in as normal a tone as possible. "Something came up at work, so I left early. You can eat them yourself." "All right," he said, sounding a little disappointed. "I'll make something delicious for you tonight, then." I hummed non-committally, hung up, and immediately changed his contact name to Scumbag. There was a cafe across the street from our neighborhood. I chose a corner seat by the window, where I could watch the entrance without being noticed. I wanted to see what Gideon did on a typical day. While waiting, I ordered a set of miniature surveillance cameras online. If Gideon had ever brought Callista to our apartment while I was at work, I needed to know. The thought of them together in the home I had poured my heart into was revolting. By the afternoon, Gideon left the house and walked straight to the Rolls-Royce. I put on a mask and hat, quickly flagged down a cab, and followed him. He stopped at a high-end hotel. My heart sank. Was he renting a room here? As the car parked, a doorman hurried over to open the door for him, bowing slightly. Gideon tossed him the keys without a second glance. I trailed him cautiously as he entered the building and stepped into a private suite. Chapter 3. Taking advantage of the waiter entering to deliver the menu, I caught a glimpse of several men and women inside, all around Gideon's age. Each of them was impeccably dressed, exuding an air of wealth and privilege. To avoid any questions from the waiter, I pretended to call a friend, feigning a conversation about finding the right private room. Then, I slipped into the empty room across the hall. Luckily, no one was inside. I left the door slightly ajar and positioned myself behind it to eavesdrop. Through the gap, I overheard them ordering an extravagant spread: steak, red wine, king crab, lobster, foie gras, and salmon, dishes I could only dream of tasting. This one meal alone must cost well into 5 figures. At home, Gideon never let leftovers go to waste, insisting we save them for the next meal. Laughter erupted from their room not long after. "Young Master Gideon," someone teased, "every time I see you in those shabby clothes, I can't help but laugh. You're the heir to $1 billion fortune. How can you bear to wear such rags? Don't you find it embarrassing?" Another voice chimed in. "When are you planning to leave her? Don't tell me you've actually grown attached to that plain-looking woman, Eloan?" I heard Gideon's voice, cold and dismissive. "How could that happen? She's just a passing distraction. A woman like her could never hold my heart. I've never met anyone as gullible as her," Gideon continued, his tone dripping with mockery. "When I told her I owed over $1.5 million, she didn't hesitate to help me pay it off. I said my family was struggling, and she hasn't bought makeup or new clothes in 5 years. Can you believe it? If I'd known she'd be this stupid, I would have asked for even more." The room filled with laughter, their jeers echoing in my ears. They were laughing at my foolishness, my naivety. I had believed I'd found true love, but I was nothing more than a fleeting amusement to him. The orphan backstory, the debt, all fabricated to manipulate my sympathy. The happy marriage I thought we shared was nothing but an illusion. It felt like my heart was being sliced open, left bare for everyone to ridicule. Yet not a single person cared about my pain. He wasn't just anyone. He was the wealthiest heir in the city. And I was the city's biggest fool. Pushing aside my sorrow, I reached into my bag and pulled out the small recording device I had prepared in advance. I carefully positioned it near the door, capturing their conversation. Moments later, someone inside asked, "Gideon, were you with Callista last night? Are you two rekindling your old flame?" Gideon's voice carried an indifferent chuckle. "It was just a casual catch-up after so many years." "I heard she was heartbroken when she found out you were married," another person added. "Serves her right for dumping Gideon to chase fame," someone else quipped. "You all don't know the half of it," another said, voice tinged with amusement. "Gideon married that plain woman just to get back at Callista." My legs felt weak, and I clutched the doorframe for support. So this was why he married me. Later, I looked up Callista online and discovered that she was Gideon's first love. Years ago, Callista's management company, determined to craft her image as a pure goddess, forbade her from dating. In pursuit of stardom, Callista broke up with Gideon. Bitter and feeling betrayed, Gideon came to believe that all women were deceitful. He turned to playing with women's hearts as a form of entertainment, cycling through girlfriends, one after another. Eventually, he decided to take his revenge a step further. He would marry someone to humiliate Callista. Worried that a wealthy woman might be after his money, he hid his identity, and that's how he found me. I was the naive fool, caught in his game. It was Callista who hurt him, not me. So why did he trample on my dignity and toy with my feelings? Anger surged within me, hot and overwhelming. As I turned to leave, I caught the sound of another question. "Gideon," someone asked, "what if she finds out about your identity and refuses to divorce?" Gideon scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. "She's too busy working to support me and pay off my debts. She doesn't have the time or energy to notice anything else. Even if she does figure it out, it doesn't matter. I have ways to make her obediently agree to the divorce, and without getting a penny from me." Though I had suspected he might think this way, hearing it in his own voice still left me stunned. How could someone be so heartless? I clenched my fists in fury. Just as I stepped out, I spotted a glamorous woman walking down the hallway. It was Callista. She entered Gideon's room, where someone immediately began showering her with compliments about her beauty. The door opened briefly as a waiter brought in the next round of dishes. From my vantage point, I could see Callista seated beside Gideon. The two of them gazed at each other with an intimacy that was palpable. Callista's eyes sparkled as she looked at Gideon. "I love the gift." "Thank you, Gideon," she said softly. Gideon's lips curved into a faint smile. "I'm glad you like it." He had spent $1 million on a gift just to make her smile. At home, he couldn't even spare enough to replace an empty bottle of shampoo, insisting I dilute it with water instead. I didn't stay to listen further. I couldn't risk being discovered. Walking down the street, I couldn't hold back my tears. For 5 years, I had loved him with everything I had. I had cooked nourishing soups for him, worried he might be overworked and exhausted. At work, I skimped on lunch, eating only buns with pickles to save money, and sent it to him for his so-called debt. And yet, this was how he repaid me. Ridiculous. Truly ridiculous. Chapter 4. I wandered the streets all day and didn't return home until after dark. When I got home, Gideon was in the kitchen cooking. Hearing the sound of the door, he turned his head and called out cheerfully, "Honey, you're back. Dinner will be ready in just a moment." Gideon wore the doryman apron I had bought him, bustling about in the narrow kitchen. It was hard to reconcile this image with the fact that he was the heir to $1 billion fortune. As he cooked, he chatted casually, "Honey, I made your favorite spicy chicken today." I asked the butcher to pick the biggest chicken, and he even threw in some green onions for free. "Oh, and I sold the cardboard and bottles we've been saving for the past couple of weeks. Made nearly $100. After buying groceries, there's still a little over 30 left. I put it in the drawer by the door. I had to admit, he was putting on quite the show. Looking at the 4 dishes and a soup on the dining table, I would have been thrilled before. I would have run to hug him, praising him as the best husband in the world. But now, I felt only bitterness. I thought back to what I had overheard earlier that afternoon. Gideon had admitted that he'd learned to cook for Callista. Yet he had told me that he had learned for my sake. Gideon emerged from the kitchen carrying a dish. Seeing my tear-stained eyes, he immediately put it down and rushed over. "Honey, what's wrong? Did something happen at work?" When I didn't answer, he frowned deeply. "Tell me, who upset you? I'll go teach them a lesson." He looked at me anxiously, his expression filled with what seemed like genuine concern and love. Feigning hesitation, I finally offered the excuse I had prepared in advance. "My boss is sending me on a business trip out of state. It could be 1 to 2 months, or even 3 to 4. I can't bear to be apart from you for so long. Just thinking about it makes me want to cry." I forced my voice to quiver, pretending to be on the verge of tears. Gideon's tense shoulders relaxed as he sighed in relief, pulling me into his arms. "You scared me. I thought someone had bullied you. If you don't want to go, then don't go." "But this is a rare opportunity," I countered softly. "If I go, I can earn a bonus big enough to almost pay off our debt." He paused for a moment before nodding. "That's easy, then. Just call me on video whenever you miss me." "Won't that disturb your work?" "Not at all. I'll wear earphones while I work. You can talk, and I'll listen." How perfect. In my past life, it was responses like this that drew me deeper into his web of lies. Just then, Gideon leaned in, trying to kiss me. I quickly turned my face away, pointing to the food. "Let's eat before it gets cold." It was likely the first time I had ever refused him, and my sudden shift seemed to catch him off guard. He hesitated for a moment, but the unease disappeared almost immediately. After dinner, I told him I needed to pack for the business trip and prepare some materials for a meeting. I urged him to go to bed without waiting for me. He didn't suspect a thing, reminding me instead to rest early after I was done. I nodded. I did need to pack, but not for a business trip. I was preparing to move out. Early the next morning, I dragged my suitcase to the cafe I had visited the day before. After watching Gideon leave for work, I doubled back to the apartment and installed 2 miniature cameras, one in the living room air conditioner vent, and another on the bedroom vanity mirror. Then, I called the landlord of the neighboring apartment and asked to rent it. That apartment had been reserved for his son, who was studying abroad, so it had been vacant for a while. I promised to rent it for only 3 months and assured him I wouldn't damage anything. Reluctantly, he agreed to rent it to me. After transferring the rent, he sent me the door code. The first thing I did after unlocking the door was install the final camera in the peephole. If my hunch was correct, Gideon would soon bring Callista here. While waiting, I kept busy. I began writing complaint letters. One about the Guerrero Group's tax evasion. Goodbye to one piece of Gideon's millions. One about fire safety violations at the Guerrero Group. Goodbye to another piece of Gideon's millions. One about the Guerrero Group violating labor laws. Another chunk gone. One about hygiene issues at their food company. And then, one more. They also had wastewater discharge problems. Another letter. Within a week, I had written over a dozen complaints. Watching the Guerrero Group trend online for nearly 2 weeks and seeing their stock prices tumble gave me an odd sense of satisfaction. But this was just the appetizer. Gideon didn't want to split his fortune with me? Fine. I'd just make sure he no longer had a fortune to divide. Gideon hadn't come home all week, no doubt too busy dealing with the fallout from my complaints. Even when I video called him these days, he seemed exhausted and almost slipped up several times. Looking at the remaining complaint letters I hadn't sent yet, I decided to give him a brief respite. If he was too busy with damage control, he wouldn't have time to bring Callista back, and I wouldn't catch him cheating. 2 days later, while I was trying to infiltrate Callista's fan group online, Gideon finally brought her to the apartment. The moment they stepped out of the elevator, they were all over each other, kissing passionately before they even reached the door. Watching through the camera feed, I saw them tear at each other's clothes as they stumbled inside. By the time they reached the bedroom, they were down to their underwear. What followed was decidedly inappropriate for younger audiences. Not wanting to give myself nightmares, I clicked record and stepped away. An hour later, when they finally settled down, I returned to my computer. Callista leaned against Gideon's chest, tracing lazy circles on it with her fingers. "You haven't contacted me in ages. I thought you were still mad about what happened back then." Gideon kissed her lightly. "The company's been having issues lately. My mom couldn't handle it all alone, so she had me help out. But as soon as I was done, I came straight to you." Callista pouted and playfully slapped his chest. "When are you going to divorce that woman? And can we go somewhere else next time? This place is old and dingy, and the bed is so hard it makes my back ache every time." Gideon chuckled but didn't seem offended. "I don't mind finding another place, as long as you don't mind the paparazzi. As for the divorce, not yet. Once she comes back from her trip and pays off the last bit of debt, I'll find an excuse to end it." Shameless. Even now, he was counting on me to pay his debts. Though Callista didn't look pleased, she didn't press the issue. Their eyes met, and they began round two. I turned off the live feed. I had often wondered why they insisted on coming here. Now I understood, it was to avoid being caught by the paparazzi. Well, in that case, I'd be a good Samaritan and hand the paparazzi a golden opportunity. Chapter 5. The next morning, I stationed myself at the cafe early, camera ready, waiting for them to appear. Callista was bundled up tightly, her face almost entirely hidden, but fans are a force to be reckoned with. After observing them over the past few days, I'd learned they could recognize their idol from the most obscure clues, even if she were wrapped like a mummy. I sorted through the photos I'd taken, selecting the clearest and most identifiable shots, and printed out a few copies. Along with Gideon's marriage certificate, I mailed the evidence to several high-profile gossip bloggers. Then, I sat back to await the next day's headlines. The following morning, as expected, the scandal involving Callista and Gideon shot straight to the top of the trending charts. Callista's fans couldn't accept that their idol was a homewrecker, fiercely debating the issue online. Some even claimed she was being framed. Meanwhile, her rival's fans seized the opportunity to gloat, adding fuel to the fire. The internet was buzzing with activity. Reading through the comments, I felt a surge of satisfaction. Just as I was engrossed in the online drama, Gideon called. His voice carried a hint of nervousness. "Honey, what are you up to?" I continued scrolling as I replied nonchalantly, "Working, of course. What else?" "I've been so busy lately." "Really busy?" he probed. I knew he was fishing to see if I'd seen the news, so I deliberately added, "Yep, too busy even to check my phone. I probably won't be able to call you much either." "Take care of yourself, honey," he said, clearly relieved. "Don't skip meals, I'd hate to see you overworked." I hummed in response, feigning a sense of being preoccupied. Then, using the excuse that my boss had just walked in, I ended the call quickly. As I scrolled through the second-to-last page of comments, one post caught my eye. A user had commented, "Callista has been a mistress more than once." The post, made by a newly created account, had only a few responses, mostly from haters agreeing with the sentiment. Intrigued, I added the user as a contact and directly asked whether their claim was true. Their response came swiftly, "Of course it's true. I have proof." They attached a photo, Callista in bed with a pot-bellied man. The man's face was pixelated, but Callista's wasn't. Recognizing a fellow victim, I decided to drop the pretense. "I'm also one of the people Callista's actions have hurt," I confessed. They said they had more evidence and asked if I wanted it. Of course, I wanted it. Who knew how long the scandalous posts would remain online? By the time I finished downloading the photos and checked back, the posts about Gideon and Callista had already been scrubbed clean. In their place was a fluff piece about a minor actor allegedly acting like a diva. Still, with these photos and my videos, I had enough to ensure her fall from grace. For Gideon, I moved on to the second phase of my plan. This time, I didn't just file anonymous reports, I also reached out to the Guerrero Group's competitors through my boss. Each time I submitted a report, I sent a message to one of their rivals. The competitors capitalized on the investigations, swooping in to snatch up business deals during Guerrero's distracted moments. In just 2 weeks, the Guerrero Group had lost over 10 contracts, amounting to millions in losses. Gideon began to sense that something was amiss. His first suspect was Callista, as she was the person he'd been spending the most time with recently. Through surveillance, I watched as they had a heated argument. Callista stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Gideon slumped onto the couch, his face a mask of frustration as he tried to figure out who had betrayed him. No matter how hard he thought, he would never guess it was me. You made me pay off $1 million debt, so I made you lose millions. Fair enough. To my surprise, Guerrero's troubles didn't end there. Tests on their dairy products revealed varying levels of melamine and sodium thiocyanate. The revelation sparked public outrage. Tax evasion might be something people could overlook, but food safety? That hit a nerve. Before they could address the food safety scandal, another issue surfaced: violations in their wastewater disposal practices. A boycott against all Guerrero Group products quickly gained momentum online. The company's stock prices plummeted to historic lows. It wasn't divine intervention, it was their own arrogance that led to this downfall. Small shareholders began selling their stakes, while major shareholders banded together, pressuring Gideon and his father to relinquish their shares and step down from the company. Gideon stayed away from home for days, and when he finally returned, he looked utterly defeated. Though someone eventually stepped forward to take the blame for the scandals, the damage to Guerrero was done. As his wife, it was only right that I showed some concern. Seeing that Gideon was home today, I ordered takeout for myself and sent him a blurry screenshot from his press conference. "Honey, look at this person. He looks just like you and even has the same name. Could it be you?" Within seconds, Gideon called. I declined the call. He called again. I hung up again. A moment later, a message came through: "Honey, please let me explain. It's not what you think. Pick up the phone. I can explain everything." I ignored him, calmly eating my food while watching him pace around the room through the surveillance feed, visibly panicked. Once I had finished eating, I finally replied. "Sorry, I missed your calls. My boss just called about a contract amendment." "What did you want to explain?" He immediately responded, "The man in the photo." Before he could finish, I interrupted. "Oh, come on. It's just a coincidence. There are plenty of people who look alike and share the same name." "What, am I supposed to believe you're secretly Gideon Guerrero, heir to the Guerrero Group?" "If that were true, it'd mean you tricked me into marrying you." "Tricked you?" he repeated, stunned. "Yeah. You'd be hiding your real identity, marrying me under false pretenses, and sticking me with your debts. Isn't that the definition of fraud?" He fell silent for a moment before stammering, "How could I ever deceive you? You're my dearest, most beloved wife." His blatant flattery made my skin crawl. "I know you wouldn't deceive me. Because if you did, I'd make sure you ended up bankrupt and buried in debt." Watching through the surveillance, I saw his expression darken, his composure cracking under the weight of my words. Desperate to change the subject, he asked, "Honey, you've been away on business for over 2 months now. When are you coming home? I miss you. The project's wrapping up soon. I'll be back in a few days. Let me know when you booked your flight. I'll come pick you up," he offered. I quickly declined. As if I'd let you pick me up and risk exposing everything. No need. The company's sending a car. I have to report to the office first anyway. You just focus on having dinner ready for me when I get home. He sounded disappointed. All right. I guess I'll have to wait for another chance to show you how much I care. I smirked to myself. Don't worry. You'll have plenty of chances to prove yourself in the future. Chapter 6. When the 3-month lease ended, I packed my bags and returned home. Gideon had prepared a meal, waiting for me. Seeing the table full of my favorite dishes, I felt a moment of wistfulness. If only he hadn't deceived me. But reality was harsh. Despite the Guerrero group's troubles, he still found time to put on a show for me. Halfway through the meal, his phone rang. He stepped onto the balcony to answer it. I couldn't hear the other person, but he frowned and said, "Wait for me. I'll be right there." After hanging up, he took off his apron and explained, "There's a disturbance at the hotel. I need to handle it." A poor excuse. What could a receptionist handle? I nodded, not exposing his lie, and told him to go quickly. After he left, I threw away all the food, removed the cameras, and sat on the sofa, waiting for Gideon to return. I wouldn't sleep in that bed again, it disgusted me. Gideon didn't come back that night. Just as I was about to call him, I received a notification from the app. Callista attacked by fans at an event, hospitalized with a concussion. Wealthy boyfriend stays by her side all night. So Gideon wasn't dealing with Vance Group issues, but was with Callista. Callista's fans praised them as a golden couple, made for each other. Callista didn't deny anything, essentially confirming it. But we weren't divorced yet. Gideon was still married. Callista couldn't wait any longer. Since that's the case, I'll give you a hand. Posting didn't work? I'll try something else. I texted Gideon, saying I needed to talk and asked him to come home. He took a long time to reply, saying he was still dealing with things and would be back in the evening. I waited until evening. Hearing the door open, I quickly used eye drops to make my face look tear-streaked. Gideon entered, seeing my tearful face, and quickly put down his keys, rushing over. "Honey, what's wrong?" I looked at him with tearful eyes. "Gideon, do you really love me?" He looked confused, but answered without hesitation, "Of course I love you. You're the love of my life." I stared at him for a long time, then wiped my tears. "Then why did you deceive me?" Gideon froze, trying to play dumb. "Honey, what are you talking about? How could I deceive you?" I showed him the news about him and Callista. "Gideon, you liar. You've been deceiving me all along. You're really a wealthy heir. You lied about your debt, made me pay it off, and you cheated with Callista." I listed his sins while crying. Gideon's smile froze. After a moment, he regained his composure, showing no guilt or panic. This was the real him, arrogant and selfish. He switched so easily, it was a shame he wasn't an actor. "Looks like you really love me," recognizing me from a side profile, he mocked. I tried to cry more. "Gideon, why? I loved you so much, treated you so well. I lived frugally, eating buns and pickles, walking home to save money, all to pay off your debt. Why did you do this to me?" I cried genuinely. I had indeed suffered these years. "Why?" "Because you're stupid, gullible, easy to deceive. I've dated many women, but only you didn't know me, only you believed such a lame excuse." I trembled with anger. "So, I deserve to be deceived?" He raised an eyebrow, not denying it. "Divorce. I want a divorce." Hearing the word divorce, he laughed, a wild, unrestrained laugh. "Fine, but you won't get a penny." "Why?" "I paid off so much debt for you. You lived off me for years, costing over $1 million. So what?" Gideon sneered. "You did it willingly. I didn't force you. You're shameless. I'll sue you for fraud." He shrugged, indifferent. "Go ahead, if you think you can win. What, do you think the Vance family can cover the sky with one hand? Try if you don't believe me." "Fine, I will. I stormed out, grabbing my phone from under the TV. Outside, I quickly checked the live stream. The viewer count had reached 1 million. The comments were filled with outrage, condemning Gideon and Callista's shamelessness. Taking advantage of my emotional state, I spoke to the camera. What should I do? Can anyone recommend a lawyer? Then I ended the stream. At the cafe across the street, in the same corner, I ordered an Americano and sent the evidence of Gideon and Callista's affair to several major gossip bloggers, waiting for Gideon's call. Just after sending it, my parents, whom I hadn't contacted in a long time, called. I had planned to apologize in person after everything was over, but they saw the news and called first. Answering the call, I choked up before speaking. Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong. My mom was already crying, so my dad took over. Silly girl, why didn't you call us after suffering so much? I was too ashamed. I misjudged him, made you angry, and cut ties with you. We were just angry. How could we disown you? Come home. We miss you. Dad, Mom, I miss you too. I'll come home after divorcing that scumbag. Chapter 7. As I was pouring my heart out to my parents, Gideon called. Before I could speak, he angrily shouted, "Alolan Taylor, how dare you use me?" I chuckled. You said those things yourself. What does it have to do with me? You bitch, you'll pay for this. Watch your words. I'm recording this call. Gideon laughed bitterly, saying, Fine, you want a divorce? Don't regret it. Regret? I only regret not seeing your true colors sooner, regret marrying you. Think carefully. I'm Gideon Vance, heir to the Guerrero Group. If you were the poor Gideon you pretended to be, I might not divorce you. But now, this marriage is over. I hung up, not wanting to argue further. I sent him the pre-drafted divorce agreement and texted. I don't want your millions. I just want what I deserve. Back home, I packed all his belongings. I left them with the security guard, took a photo, and informed him to pick them up in the morning. The next morning at 9, I arrived at the Civil Affairs office on time. But Gideon was half an hour late. Just as I was about to call him, he finally showed up. Not wanting any complications, I handed him the signed divorce agreement. After the 30-day cooling-off period, we could finalize the divorce. I posted the news online, thanking everyone for their support. Within half a day, my phone was bombarded with messages. Colleagues, classmates, and relatives all sent messages of concern. Even my landlord, Ella, messaged me. Alolan, are you moving out because of this? If so, I'll renovate the place, replace all the furniture and appliances. Don't move out. It's rare to find such a good tenant. Finding a good tenant is hard, and finding a good landlord is equally rare. Besides, I was used to living there. I thanked Ella and agreed to stay. With my vacation not yet over, I went back to my parents' home for a while. In just a few years, they had aged significantly. Previously, my goal was to help Gideon pay off his debt, buy a house, have children, and live happily ever after. Now, my goal was still to buy a house, but to bring my parents to live with me and ensure we lived happily together. When my vacation ended and I returned, the apartment had been completely renovated. It was now a trendy minimalist style, with all new furniture. Ella had really gone all out. I shifted my focus entirely to work. One morning, as soon as I arrived at the office, my colleagues gathered around to share some gossip. Did you hear? Callista was exposed by paparazzi yesterday. They revealed she had inappropriate relationships with several directors and executives to get top-tier resources. She's been a mistress more than once, and there's photographic evidence. Rumor has it that Gideon broke up with her. The person who exposed her was her assistant. Apparently, Callista treated her assistant terribly, with constant abuse and insults, so the assistant decided to reveal everything. The photos circulating online were the same ones I had received. I hadn't been following their news for a while. Originally, I had planned to use those photos as a final blow, But the affair scandal had already led to Callista's downfall, making the photos unnecessary. I just treated it as entertainment, smiling and moving on. It had nothing to do with me anymore. After work, as I left the office, I saw Gideon waiting at the entrance. He immediately approached me, acting overly friendly. "Aloan, let me drive you home." I coldly ignored him. His sudden attentiveness was suspicious. Had he broken up with Callista and now wanted to get back with me? Did he think I was so foolish to fall into the same trap twice? Seeing me walk away, Gideon blocked my path. "Aloan, I know I was wrong. Can you forgive me?" I looked at him indifferently. "Gideon, we're already divorced. We have nothing to do with each other anymore." Gideon put on a show of deep affection. "I was wrong before. I'm sorry. I apologize. After everything, I realized you're the one who truly loves me. Let's cancel the divorce." I found it laughable. Who gave him the confidence to think that a simple apology and some sweet words would make me return to him? "Be with me, and you can live in my mansion. I'll add your name to the property deed. I'll give you a monthly allowance, and you won't have to work anymore." I looked at him coldly. Even now, he didn't understand what he had done wrong. Seeing my silence, Gideon thought I was wavering and continued, "Aloan, think carefully. This is your only chance to become wealthy. Otherwise, you'll be renting for the rest of your life." He knew my biggest dream was to own a home. "Gideon, you're disgusting. From the moment I found out you deceived me, I lost all feelings for you. No matter how many houses you buy me, I won't be with you again." I thought Gideon would stop after my outburst, but he didn't. He waited for me outside the office every day, even sending lunch to my workplace. Even though my colleagues looked at him with disdain, he didn't care. He also waited outside my apartment. Despite my complaints to security, he always found a way in. Ella, the landlord, moved in next door to help. Whenever he showed up, she called the police or security. Eventually, I realized Gideon wasn't trying to win me back out of love. He needed me to play a role to restore his public and shareholder image. Due to the food safety and pollution issues, Gideon's mother had been forced to leave the Guerrero Group. Her departure condition was to keep Gideon as the general manager. But with his affair and fraud scandals, the company's stock kept dropping. The shareholders' condition was that if he could restore his public image, he could remain as general manager. If not, he would have to leave like his mother. So he broke up with Callista and came back to me. I informed Callista of this. She was desperate for a way to regain public attention. Upon learning this, she posted a video online, tearfully claiming to be a victim, saying Gideon deceived her and spread rumors about her relationships with directors. Gideon responded by creating an account to refute her claims. The internet was once again in an uproar. It was a dog-eat-dog situation, with both sides getting hurt. In the end, neither benefited. The public saw through their lies. Gideon was eventually removed from the Guerrero Group and sued by the company for damages caused by the scandals, drastically reducing his fortune. Callista was completely blacklisted from the entertainment industry. When the 30-day cooling-off period ended, I called Gideon to finalize the divorce. This time, he wasn't late, and the process went smoothly. I received the few million I was entitled to. Holding the divorce certificate, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. A failed marriage wasn't the end, the important thing was to cut your losses in time. Ella insisted on celebrating my divorce. Coincidentally, her son, who had been studying abroad, had returned. I invited my parents to join us. At the dinner table, Ella introduced us. "Aloan, this is my son, Keir Smith. He's a doctor. Keir, this is the girl I've been telling you about, Aloan." I smiled and extended my hand. "Nice to meet you, I'm Aloan." He shook my hand. "Nice to meet you, I'm Keir." In that moment, I suddenly remembered the voice I heard in the ambulance in my previous life. "It was you."